we will upload the recording soon after we finish. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone and audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. Otherwise, I'm gonna post the number of the meeting so you can call in. The webinar will include a presentation during which you will have the opportunity to ask questions. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If you wish to take the floor, please send me a message privately and I will give you the floor. You are mute in by default, so whenever you want to take the floor, just please unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will keep everyone muted. I would now like to introduce Ms. Adrienne Cruz, our expert for this session, and who is going to tell us how to design a gender-responsive project. Adrienne.
Thank you also to Esther Gomez and others who have supported and gotten us to get together today. So it's really a pleasure. I would like to also at some point ask if everybody can we see if everybody knows how to raise your hand with this technology?
Well, we are in a version of WebEx where we can host many people, so we won't have this option. But as I mentioned, there is a possibility to send me a private message, so actually people can take the floor and without interrupting you, actually.
Excellent, thank you. This worked very well because we couldn't raise hands virtually in the last webinar, and so we actually had a lot of audience participation with the private questions. So please, at any point, you are welcome to and even encouraged to send a question. And then this will help us to address your needs and concerns, because this is about, we want this to be very participant-centric, and we really want this to be helpful to you. I also thank everybody for filling in the webinar seminar questionnaire, which I have read, and I've looked to see who's joining us today and what your concerns are. So let's get right into our little mini session today on how to design a gender-responsive project. And I can't actually see the screen.
Yeah, the screen is basically the third tab if you see webinar for Pardev.
Where is that?
On top, the top tabs is the third tab. You're the presenter, so you can navigate the presentation at your pace.
All right, I'm sorry, but I don't see the top tab. What is the top tab word?
Let me put that for you. Voila.
Voila, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so today we're going to quickly make sure we're all on the same page concerning some key concepts. Then we're going to go a little bit into the why, who, and what. Why are we concerned about gender-responsive projects? Who is responsible for this? What does it mean? And then we're going to zoom in on the most important first step of having a gender-responsive initiative, whatever it is, and that is the situation analysis. We're going to talk a little bit about indicators, and then we're going to share some good practices and tips. So this is our program for today. Fatima, I'm trying
yes,
to change.
You can on the top of your screen. Just navigate the slides. Voila.
Gotcha, thank you. Okay, thanks for reminding me about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to buzz together virtually about some key concepts. I'm going to put these concepts up, and then I'm hoping that some of you could please unmute your phone, your microphone, and just shout out what you think might be a good definition. We're looking for just phrases or words. We're not going to define these in any profound way today, but we're just making sure we're all on the same page. The first set of key concepts are paid productive work, and I've twinned that with unpaid reproductive work. Is there anybody who would like to define for us what we mean when we say paid productive work? And by the way, please do not worry about taking notes. It's important to listen and watch, because when you receive the presentation, I have entered into the notes section of this PowerPoint all the answers. So you have all the definitions. So please don't worry about taking notes. Would anybody like to shout out, what do we mean by paid productive work and or unpaid reproductive work?
Please feel free to unmute yourself to speak. Thank you.
We all know work. If you look up. Okay, is someone trying to speak there? I heard some. Anton? Okay, I don't hear anybody. I'll let Fatima see if maybe there's some written definitions coming in. If you look up work or labor in the dictionary, it simply says a service or a product provided. And if we just unpack these terms, productive work, as defined, as commonly defined, is any service or product which is performed or provided, and for which there is some sort of remuneration that may be in kind or it may be paid. And unpaid reproductive work, reproductive is quite easy. That is connected with, reproducing our species, basically. So giving birth, and then the care that is needed for the baby to grow up, be educated, fed, etc. This reproductive work can also mean the work that is performed in the household or in the community that's connected with that, that's connected with taking care of elderly children. Now, yes?
Adrienne, we have Sophia who sent in a definition, and she's saying, so paid productive work is work leading to the expected product or service, and for which the remuneration is paid.
Perfect. Okay, that's a very nice, simple, and clear definition. Thank you, Sophia. Did anybody define unpaid reproductive work?
No, but we expect people to send in more definitions, we hope. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So unpaid reproductive work, as I was saying, is not remunerated. It's overwhelmingly performed by women and girls in households and in communities. We do see some increases in the amount of unpaid reproductive work that's being performed by men. For example, in the country I'm from, the North America, men are almost performing half of the unpaid reproductive work right now. Now, let's go to the next. I think those are pretty straightforward, and I think everybody understands those. Let's go to the next set of concepts. And these, I've again put two concepts related together. The two concepts here are productive resources and benefits. Would anyone like to define for us one or both of these terms? And I'll give you a few minutes.
Just to unmute yourself, there is your microphone with the red icon. If you click on it, you'll be unmuted and you will be able to speak. So just if you wish to take the floor, click on the icon. Thank you. Okay, so we have Sophia again that sent a message saying resources needed to produce expected product or services are productive resources.
Exactly. And would someone like to give an example? What are some examples of those resources? Fatma, are there any?
Yeah, we have another message from Sophia, and she's saying, so our reproductive resources are human resources, knowledge is an example, or raw materials.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Sophia, and I thank you for contributing so actively. So yes, productive resources are any sort of input needed to produce a service or a product. So, and some examples could be capital. So you often need financial resources in order to invest in the machines or the animals or the land that's needed. Productive resources are also, as you said, rightly said, Sophia, knowledge, data, information about my market, information about prices, information about my clients. And I'll go ahead and finish off by saying that benefits are anything that accrues to the as a result of this investment with productive resources that results in this service or product. So benefits will be either an in-kind payment, or it could be cash. It could be and it could be also non-material benefits, but which are incredibly important, such as status in my community, power, knowledge that will help me in order to further produce using resources. So that's productive resources and benefits. Let's go to now. We have 2 more sets left, and I'm going to start calling on you. And I'm not calling on Sophia, but I'm going to start calling on some of the other participants to help me with this, because I know who you are, and I know some of you are very experienced, and you know these inside and out. So please, I hope that we're going to have some others contributing. The 2 concepts that we're now going to look at, and these it's very rare now to conduct a webinar and not to have participants know what we're talking about here. A gender absent project, or any initiative, policy, activity, workshop, study, anything, but here today we're talking about projects. So a gender absent project as opposed to a gender responsive project. By the way, so please, can I get a couple of typed in contributions of what you think one or the other might be? And just to let you know, we used to say gender blind project, but our disability specialists and others have suggested to us to avoid using the word blind in a negative connotation, in a negative way. So that's why I'm using today gender absent project. And gender responsive is now the term that we use. We don't use the term gender sensitive anymore. We now use the term gender responsive. This is across all the UN system. Fatma, are we getting any definitions coming in?
Not yet, but I believe people, yes, we do. Okay, so Anton just sent a message saying absent does not facilitate or ensure equal treatment of men and women.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That is exactly right. When a project does not take into account the often different needs and concerns of both women and of men, then the project is not going to, there are going to be challenges for this project, beginning with participation, and all straight through on to implementation, the strategizing, holding of activities. If I haven't taken into account that women might not be able to attend workshops, if I'm holding it, the if the venue is far away because of mobility issues, because of security issues for the public transport, because of timing. Remember when we go back to the unpaid reproductive work, we said that women and girls perform the overwhelming responsibility of this work. That means that their time is very compromised. They are time poor. And so if you hold a workshop after hours at night, it's going to be more difficult, depending on the context, for women to even come. So thank you. That was a very nice definition, short, precise, and to the point. And
if I may to say something about the gender responsive, I work in PARDEV in the unit of appraisals, so it's this is right up our alley, I think.
This is Esther Gomez. Thank you, Esther. Yes.
For gender responsive, what we tend to see in proposals when we see project proposals with that we can say, okay, this is a gender responsive proposal. It's mainly a project document or a concept note where the background analysis contains a gender analysis. Now, what does this mean? It means that the proposal makes clear reference to existing gender roles, to the division of labor, to any opportunities, and also any constraints for women and men to access and control resources, as well as women's and men's different practical and strategic needs. It's also where the analysis, in the analysis we can see that the data is disaggregated by sex, and where the logical framework, where we can see in the logical framework that gender equality is mainstream. So we take a look at those during the appraisal process, and if those are of considerable gender-sensitive outcomes, outputs, and activities, we say that the proposal is gender responsive. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was really well said, and you actually described perfectly the situation analysis that is gender responsive, and you even gave examples.
So, Adrienne?
Yes?
Hi. So we have a message from Burku, and he says, or she says, sorry, but gender responsive should be able to respond to the needs of men and women.
Yes, exactly. Why do we prefer the word responsive rather than sensitive? Gender sensitive means that you are aware of and you're sensitive to the different context, concerns, and needs of both women and men in the community that we're talking about, the group that we're looking at, that we're analyzing. But responsive, as our participant just said, is actually being proactive. Responding means you have taken these things into account, and now you're going to be proactive. And this is exactly what our Director General has asked us to do and what our governing body has asked us to do. And I want to thank also Esther for bringing up the fact that PARDEV is sharing project proposals through the SharePoint on Drive with Gender Equality and Diversity and ILO Age Unit branch where I sit. And I actually have in my hands one of the project proposals. This is, I don't know if you can see that. This is on the Global Better Work Flagship Program. And I have reviewed it. I'm going to be putting in my the comments and suggestions. And by the way, Esther, just to let you know, this one is a good practice. The indicators especially are a good practice, and I think we should share them widely with other proposal drafters, because they really do capture what we're talking about when we say gender inclusive indicators. Anybody else? Fatma, before I move to the next?
We don't have any more definitions sent.
Okay, excellent. Just one last thing on this. If you write up a gender absence project or conduct a gender-absent activity, we have 30 years of research now that shows us, and it's very clear, there's no doubt about this, you are merely, at best, you are merely reinforcing unequal relations between women and men in the world of work. You are not challenging them, you're reinforcing unequal relations and the unequal status of women in the world of work. That's in the best case scenario. You may even be exacerbating and further marginalizing women if your project is gender absent. And we can talk about some examples if you want to. A gender responsive project is going to be based on the premise, and this is clear in the SDGs, it's clear in our own ILO policies, etc., vision, that if we don't have equitable participation of both women and men, we are not going to achieve sustainable, sustained, and inclusive, decent work and development. It's just as simple as that. Okay, so let's move on to the next set of terms. Again, you know, the webinars that we've held so far, I've been impressed with the level of understanding about these two terms. So I hope this group today, I hope you're going to also impress me. We want to define now gender mainstreaming, and we want to define the term gender equality. We throw these around a lot, but do we really know what these mean? So I'm going to talk just a little bit until Fatma interrupts me to tell me that we have some definitions. Gender mainstreaming, you know, this was I'm going to just give you some background information while we're waiting for the definitions. Gender mainstreaming was the agreed strategy at the Beijing 1995 World Conference on Women. Over 200 world leaders attended, and the world agreed together that we're going to use this strategy called gender mainstreaming. Gender equality in the world of work is a much more focused, obviously we're ILO, so gender equality is a very big phrase. It means a lot of things. But in the world of work, we actually have a quite simple definition for what this means. And let's see if anybody gets it. Do I have any volunteers?
Yes, so we have a message saying gender equality means to ensure that men and women are treated equally in the world of work. And then we have another message saying gender mainstreaming implies consideration in policy and actions of particular needs that women and men share in the labor market.
Excellent. Any others?
We just had those two. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I hope some others will come in. Okay, so I'm not sure who contributed the first, but I want to thank them. That is exactly right. As a matter of fact, I had just said there's a very simple definition that we use vis-a-vis gender equality in the world of work. And here it is, and you got the first part. We want to ensure that both women and men are treated equally. So we say, here's how I'll just rephrase it, and there's a second part of this. We want everybody to enjoy equal opportunities and treatment in the world of work. If there's one thing you take away from today is we want to ensure that both women and men enjoy equal opportunities and treatment in the world of work. I'll give one easy example for opportunities: being able to access a paying job, equal opportunity. So going for a job interview, and I know that the process is going to be based on who has the most relative competencies experience, and not based on the fact whether I was born a girl or a boy. That's irrelevant. It's based on competencies, interest, experience, potential. And treatment, an example of treatment, well, I'll say equal pay, because being equally remunerated, paid and remunerated for your work, not based on whether you're a man or woman, but based on your contributions, your competencies, that's one of the core ILO values. Equal pay, not only for equal work, but work of equal value. Any other contributions?
Yes.
Fatma?
Yes, we do, and we have a pretty comprehensive definition. Maybe Estelle would like to read it for us because she sent it in.
Okay. Basically, I really don't know the exact definition, but I feel that mainstreaming includes gender-specific activities and affirmative action whenever women or men are in a particular disadvantageous position. I understood as well that gender-specific interventions can target women exclusively, men and women together, or only men to allow them to participate in and benefit from a project. These are necessary temporary measures designed to combat the direct and indirect consequences of past discriminations, and I believe through projects we can do this. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that really set us up. Yes, sorry?
Yeah, we have two other, we have an intervention from Sophia, and maybe we should let Sophia take the floor because she has also a question. Sophia?
Yes.
Just please unmute yourself and...
I'm mute.
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting information you provide to us. And so I have a question regarding some particular works which really could be difficult for women to fulfill, like, let's say, work in mines or in some other productive, hazardous productive conditions. According to CV, let's say, or background, woman has enough experience, education, and so on, but not experience, but education, and theoretically could do this work as a miner. But in terms of her physical ability capacities, it's difficult for women to do such a work. How shall we treat such situations? Do men should have priority, or women should have equal, let's say, equal grounds together with men to occupy such positions?
Okay, thank you. That's a very practical, on-the-ground question. So let me come to that after we finish defining. Thank you. Anybody else, Fatma?
No, not for now.
Okay. All right. So let's just finish defining these two, and then I thank the colleague for taking us out of the theory and into a very practical example. So gender mainstreaming, just to sum up, gender mainstreaming is a strategy to achieve the goal of gender equality in the world of work. Like Esther said, gender mainstreaming consists of two components. First, everything that we do, we want to be gender responsive, not gender absent. So what we call the mainstreamed work, anything we do will take into account the needs and concerns of both women and men with the goal of equal access to and treatment in this particular world of work context. And as Esther said, the second component of gender mainstreaming is what we call equity measures, or she said affirmative action. You'll hear both of these terms. And this is to target one group or the other in order to, for example, build up women's confidence to speak in public, perhaps build up negotiating skills, increase knowledge about the process that we're about to go on, because women have never really gone to one of the meetings because they didn't feel comfortable going. And then Esther talked about men. And we always want to, here's another lesson learned from long, hard, many decades of experience. If you attempt to have a gender responsive project and you want to have some targeted capacity building measures, and you want to even make sure that we're helping women, helping the constituents to better address gender issues, please, here's the second takeaway, please, you will get backlash from men unless you make sure to very early on help men understand why we're doing this and the benefits that this is going to have for their families in the community, for their businesses, for the development strategies of the country. It's very important to bring on men and engage men as gender champions. So this is going to be religious leaders, this is going to be the potential peer educators, the opinion leaders in this community, sports figures, singers, young men. So this is an important component. So thanks, Esther, for that. And then the colleague asked the question about, well, what about in male-dominated, dangerous occupations? And she used the example of mining. So first of all, if we do a good situation analysis, we actually discover that women are very involved in many areas. Women are very much involved in the mining sector, but because they tend to be in the informal, on the outskirts, or hidden because of the informal nature of their work, then they're invisible. So do we want women to be able to work as miners? Well, here's how I would answer that. Whenever we go into factories, whenever we work with situations where it's a male-dominated workforce, and remember, from a gender perspective, men tend to be much more vulnerable to some of the most dangerous working conditions. They're overrepresented in the military. They're overrepresented as prison authorities. They're overrepresented in police work, which makes them much more vulnerable. So when we go in to a male-dominated, dangerous workplace, we actually we have seen that as soon as we start talking about OSH, safety, perspective measures, so that women can come into this work, can come in and work as well, it's very interesting. It actually makes us look at the dangerous working conditions for the men as well. And what happens is that we start focusing on the dangerous working conditions, lack of equipment, vulnerabilities, etc. And this actually helps improve men's working conditions. So that's all I'm going to say now, because I want to move to the next section of our webinar. But we can come back to that if you like. I just want to finish this part with two pictures for you, and this is to represent a term. I just want to be clear about a term that we often hear, and there's a lot of confusion. So I want to give you a real simple. I used the word equity measures, and Esther had also used the term affirmative action, I believe. You sometimes hear positive measures, positive affirmative action. So what's the difference between equity and the word equality? And again, this is in the notes section. I've clearly written this out for you, so don't worry, it's there. The first picture on the left, you see I've arrived, I've looked at the problem, and the problem is I see that some of the spectators cannot see this baseball game. They can't see over the fence into the stadium. So I say, okay, I'm treating everybody equally. I'm going to give them little boxes to stand on, and so this is going to solve the problem. So I have said everybody's going to be treated equally. equality in access to the game, but you see that there's a problem. Actually, one of them especially, still can't see what's happening. Now, look at the right-handed side. The picture shows that I have taken equity measures. What does equity measures mean? Equity is merely a strategy to achieve equality. So equity means I'm looking to somehow make a level playing field. I want everybody to participate, and I might have to take extra measures to make sure that that happens, to address, for example, past unequal economic, social, political, discrimination. So I have put 2 boxes there for one of the spectators, and now everybody is on a level playing field. Everybody can see the game. Okay, so
Adrienne?
Yes.
Hi, we have, I believe, colleagues from Bangkok office who wants to interact.
Yes, please.
Adrienne?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Myself and my colleague India here. Sorry we've come in a bit late. We were trying to work the technology. Anyway, just in following up, Adrienne, one of the issues that we see often is, okay, we do the agenda analysis, we look at the situation, and people say, okay, at a minimum, we look at how it impacts on men and women. But Adrienne, you also used the example of sectors or industries where men dominate. And oftentimes, if we think that there are not that many women, or it's an industry where women are not likely to be predominant, then we don't look at some of the other variables. For example, age. For example, socioeconomic status. And I find that sometimes, yes, while we recognize that women are generally more excluded, especially in this part of the world, age, socioeconomic status, cultural status, and things like that are often not taken into account sufficiently. I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that and maybe give us some examples, or good examples of how that's been handled.
Thank you very much. Was that Margaret?
Yes.
Hi, Margaret. Thank you for that.
We have a question for you, Adrienne, and it's from Saloni. And the question is, why looking at how gender responsive a report is or isn't, is there a checklist that the ILO uses?
Oh, okay. That's easy to answer, Saloni. Yes, we have a gender action plan here. This is the governing body insists that the DG report to it every 2 years about the outcome of the plan, and we have indicators. And actually, here are the indicators. Actually, our research department has several very important indicators, and I developed a checklist for research documents, but really this checklist can apply to any published or think piece document. So I will share that with participants through Fatma after this seminar, and I'm also going to share the DCOM. Our DCOM, Department of Public Communication, also has a gender responsive checklist, and that's for more sort of media products and things that are a little less research oriented when you're doing your advocacy, and I will share that with you. That's in English, French, and Spanish. I want to come now so thank you for your very practical question, Saloni. Margaret, yes, male-dominated sectors. You brought up a great issue, and I thank you for that, because my branch also contains now, after the merger reform, we also have a team on indigenous peoples. We have a team working on people with disabilities, and we also have a team working on HIV and AIDS. So yes, thank you very much for making that point. Obviously, we're all born, with some exceptions, but we're all born either girl or boy. And from day one, you know, you're put into in my country, you're put into either a pink blanket or a blue blanket, and thus socialization vis-a-vis expected roles, responsibilities, interests, duties, starts from day one based on whether you're born girl or boy. Now, there are also other factors that can be very important in this socialization process and that will affect your place or not in the world of work later. These factors include, and you named many of them, Margaret: age, socioeconomic status, member of ethnic group, religion, class, disability. You know, these all depend on the context. So, of course, a woman from an elite, upper class, educated family I've even had women tell me this in many of the countries where we've gone. I've never been discriminated against in my life, and I believe some of these women. Whereas, anyway, that's an extreme example. So thank you for making the point, and I invite other colleagues, if you want to come in on this point as we continue, I invite you to do that. I'm going to move now quickly to the why. Why are we doing this? Well, our Director General, I think, summed it up really well when he presented the action plan to the governing body and when he talked about what we need to do to get our own house in order. And I'm just going to read this. Since 1999, the ILO policy on gender equality has been operationalized through these action plans. After so many years, is an action plan still needed? I have no doubt that it is. Gender equality is not only an inherent value of the ILO, but perhaps more than ever, strong leadership is needed in this area as major gender gaps in the world of work persist. Recent ILO data shows that millions of women are actually losing ground in the quest for equality in the world of work. There is no time for complacency and no time to waste, and the ILO must lead by example. This seminar that we are holding today is actually a result of the governing body and our PARDEV colleagues being very alarmed by the fact that, and I'm going to go to my next slide, despite the fact that we had the 1995 Beijing Conference on Women, which I mentioned earlier, and the fact that we've had the Beijing plus 10, Beijing plus 15, Beijing plus 20, now the MDGs. Now we've got the Sustainable Development Goals. We still we have hit a plateau on several important indicators. For example, women's participation in employment. We've hit a plateau for the last 20 years, by the way. Who else has told us that we need to do this? Well, you mentioned you saw the DG. He said it's in our DNA. Well, that's true. The 1919 ILO Constitution and many of our standards, including 2 of the fundamental conventions, the 1919 ILO Convention mentions in the first sentence of the preamble, it mentions women. And it goes on to talk about equal work. And one of the very first conventions was the Maternity Convention. The 1999 Gender Equality Policy, which you saw the DG mention when responding to the governing body, says that our Director General is accountable to that governing body. That's why the governing body says, you report to us about how you're doing, where are the gaps, and where's progress. We want to know. And by the way, there are 2 accountability mechanisms in this action plan for management, and those were actually drafted by and cleared with the DG. It doesn't, these are accountability mechanisms for our managers. Regional directors are accountable for gender responsive outcomes and indicators. Field office directors are accountable in program areas, DWCPs, and promoting constituents' capacities. We need to get our own house in order, but we also, of course, want to help build our constituents' capacities to mainstream gender and promote equality in the world of work. That's really why we're here. And all staff are responsible for mainstreaming gender in their decent work, in their daily and decent work. Okay, so we've had 100 years now, almost. In 2019, we'll be celebrating our 100 years. We've had 100 years of governing body resolutions, decisions, discussions. We have a cross-cutting policy driver on gender equality and non-discrimination. That was, the governing body said, no more cosmetic fixes. We want this, and we want you to measure it, and we want it to be cross-cutting, and we want you to report back to us on how you're doing. The Action Plan Progress and Gaps report I told you goes to the governing body. In March 2017, we saw that 25% of the program and budget 2018-19 indicators are gender inclusive. It's not a choice of, oh, one of the success factors is gender equality. I can use this if I want. No, 25% actually require it, and we're looking to increase that. And by the way, that was the governing body. I attend and read all these documents. That was the governing body going back to the DG and saying, no, you need to further mainstream gender into the indicators of the PMB 18-19. That was from our constituents. November 2012, the governing body told our Director General, we want you to write a letter to all governments that did not have at least critical mass, minimum critical mass of 30% women on their delegations to the ILC with the aim of achieving parity. We want to know, we want you to ask them, what are they doing to not only increase up to 30% minimum critical mass and achieve gender equality, gender parity, which is 45 to 55% of women on the delegations. I have all the letters here actually in that file right there, and I'm happy to share if you'd like to know if there was a letter sent out to the government in your country. Finally, these are just examples. We could go back 100 years, but I'm giving you some recent examples of who our governing body, our constituents, what they've said we need to do. And March 2005, at that time it was called technical cooperation, needs to mainstream gender. I'm going very quickly through these, and Fatma, I'll depend on you if there's a question to just interrupt me. Now, yes?
No, we just have questions, but for the Q&A, so we'll...
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have reproduced here for you, and you have it in the presentation. I have just cut and pasted that last thing I told you about, the 2005 March. Okay, that's what, over 10 years ago. 2005 March decision by our governing body about mainstreaming gender equality into technical cooperation, what was then called technical cooperation. This, and the reason I've cut and pasted here, because it really is the simplest step-by-step recipe to mainstream gender into projects. The governing body requests the Director General work with constituents, donors, and the beneficiaries so that all development cooperation programs and projects systematically mainstream gender throughout the project cycle. This implies involvement of both women and men in the consultations with the constituents and beneficiaries and in the analysis. We're going to do that today. Inclusion of data disaggregated by sex and data that captures gender barriers or gender opportunities, right? Formulating gender, now we say gender responsive. They said gender sensitive strategies and objectives and indicators, because what gets measured gets done. Outputs of activities are consistent with these, and striving for gender and balance in the recruitment of project personnel and experts and representation in institutional structures set up under the projects. And finally, in terms of reference for evaluations, require those to take into account equality and gender expertise in the team and in its output. Work with the donors, so these partnership agreements make specific provisions to support and guarantee gender mainstreaming, And finally, increase through technical cooperation the capacity of our constituents, like I just said, and implementing partners to promote gender equality in the world of work. Now, that was 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. Now, I want to ask us, we're here between ourselves in a safe place. Have we achieved what they asked us to do 10 years ago? Okay. Well, from the point of view of our development cooperation, a big no. A big no, huh? Look at this. This is one of the indicators tracked by the Action Plan on Gender Equality. In 2007, so I'm starting even before, 0% of the Decent Work Country programs had at least 3 gender inclusive indicators. That's either sex disaggregation in the indicator, or the indicator is focused on dismantling a discriminatory law or practice vis-a-vis women, or it's focused on building up and working towards gender responsive legislation or other actions. So 0 in 2007. I know because I'm the one who conducted the scan. In 2008-2009, we had 28% of development cooperation projects actually had gender, a certain percentage. I don't remember the methodology. I think we actually made it much more rigorous. We increased, it wasn't just 3 indicators. We increased our methodology, the rigor of our methodology. 28% of decent work of development cooperation projects did contain, did reach this gender marker. We have what we call a gender marker. So they were considered to be gender responsive. And in the presentation, in the notes section, you will see the definitions for the gender markers. Just trust me on this for now, but you'll see the definitions. I'm trying to be transparent and show you what our methodology was. In 2010-2011, this rose slightly to 31% of development cooperation projects were gender responsive. And you can see here, PARDEV and with the former, and with my branch, we were conducting some trainings. PARDEV had some excellent guides that they produced on gender responsive projects. So you can see there's some movement here to improve. 36% in 2012-2013, 36% of development cooperation was considered gender responsive. And then we fell back to 27% in the last biennium. Now, before we say, well, you know, it's hard, it's difficult, well, I want to tell you another story. I want to tell you another story, and this is about Decent Work Country programs. And we have an indicator that measures the extent to which Decent Work Country program indicators are gender inclusive. So that's what gets measured gets done, right? So this is how we're measuring the extent to which Decent Work Country programs are incorporating gender or not. It's all about those indicators because that's what you're going to be evaluated on. That's what you're going to plan your activities around. That's what you're going to, the monitoring exercise is going to focus on that. So in 2008-2009, 0% of Decent Work Country programs contained at least contained at least 35% gender inclusive indicators, a big 0. Now in 2010-2011, that rose to 17%. Why? Well, program revised its drafting. You all know the DWC drafting guide. It's on the, you can Google that. They revised it and we helped them. They actually included almost all our suggestions. We said, hey, just give us some, implement it, mainstream that into your guide, because that's what everybody looks at. Not interested in producing a separate and parallel guide. No, we want to mainstream it. They did that. That thing rose to 17%. We also incorporated this into our trainings, our own gender audits, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of effort that went into making that 17%. In 2012-13, that rose to 30%. So we're at critical mass, 30%. In 2014-15, I'm really proud to say 50% of decent work country programs contained indicators of which the critical mass, at least 30%, were gender inclusive. That's huge. And the Director General was quite, pleased to be able to tell our governing body that, and they did like that, but they said keep improving. So this can be done. This can be done, and our Decent Work Country program story there shows that we can do it. So let's now get in a little bit into our nitty-gritty. Am I okay, Fatima, with time?
Yes, we still have some time, so I think with the evolution of your presentation, we'll be on time.
Okay. We spent a little bit more time with this group than we did the first webinar on the first section, but I'm really happy we did. So I'm going to rush a little bit through this, but I'm hoping that you're still going to contribute some questions or comments, or please even experiences. Let's share some good practices. So remember, this very short webinar, we're focusing on design stage, and we're specifically focusing on that very first yellow box at the top, identification, which is also called situation analysis. Here's the good news. If you can get this part right, then you set yourself up for a gender-responsive project for the rest of the steps. Here's the bad news. You get this part wrong, and you will never, ever be able to catch up. And at the end, right before evaluation, or evaluation time, and believe me, it's not going to be pretty because we've been working with our eval unit. They are going to carry out a gender-responsive evaluation with you. You're going to be trying to constantly catch up, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's not going to be effective. So let's get it right in the situation analysis, and you really have set up the project to do well. Now, what do we mean by a gender-responsive situation analysis? Well, many of you already said this. You already said, well, we're looking at both women and men. We're not ignoring men. Men also have specific risks and vulnerabilities because of gender socialized stereotyping about the type of work they can do, their responsibilities, their duties, the type of work they're not allowed to do, they're not expected. So this is not about forgetting men. This is about a situation analysis that looks at both women and men. Now, there's four simple steps. Let's run through them quickly. And many of you already brought this up, Esther especially. Division of labor. We're looking at the division of labor of my project, community, or area. I want to know who is performing productive work and getting paid for that or not. Small family business members might not be getting paid for that productive work, but it is. So who's performing productive work? And who is performing or not that reproductive work, which is unpaid? So I want to know, are women overwhelmingly performing the reproductive work, and so they have no time to participate in my project and then engage in productive work? I want to know that. Second step, I want to look at the productive resources and benefits. Who has access to these productive resources, the land, the capital, the money, the information? And Esther had said the magic word, control over. So it's not just about, oh, I have access to, the women have access to land, but 86% is controlled by men. I just read this in our trends report in Africa. It's access to and control over productive resources as well as the benefits. So, example of not having access to the benefits, well, in some countries, I'll use India as an example. Although women are engaged in paid work, when they take their pay at home, to the home, many actually do not keep that money. It's given to the mother-in-law or the husband or some other male member of that household. Benefits include other things as well, but I'm using pay as the most obvious example. Third step in my analysis any analysis, right? We're just adding the gender component. I need to look at both practical needs of my group, and I need to look at strategic needs. Now, practical needs, very simple. It's the day-to-day. And the poorer you are, the more poor you are, the more these are connected to the most, basic survival needs. Water provision. Do I need to walk an hour to go get water, bring it back? Food provision. Childcare. Care of elderly members of my household. And in many instances of my community. Strategic needs are what are what need to be addressed so that I can be activated in the world of work. I can engage and enjoy equal opportunities and treatment in the world of work. So I've just given you some examples there, and you all know these much better than me. You're there on the ground. You know these much better than me. I gave two, training and voice, but I'm going to change that word voice to representation. Representation, especially in decision making. But it may start out with voice. Final, fourth step in a situation analysis, that, by the way, is gender responsive. Opportunities and challenges. Several of you mentioned this for the constituents. So what are the opportunities and challenges for our constituents to promote gender equality? That's our bread and butter, right? Is to help our constituents achieve their SDG goals, achieve their development goals, 5-year, 10-year goals. Okay. Now, this could be difficult to remember. So it's in I've given you more information in the PowerPoint notes. But you'll notice, for me, here's how I remember it, right? Here's my tip. Division of labor, that starts with a D. Access to control over resources and benefits, that starts with an A. Needs, that starts with an N. And O, opportunities and challenges. DANO, D-A-N-O. Well, I just always remember that acronym are the first letters of one of my favorite yogurt brands. I don't know if you have Danone in your own countries, but Danone is a yogurt brand. So I just remember that little visual, the little yogurt box. Ah, yeah, DANO. Division of labor, access to control over resources, needs, and opportunities. That's how I remember it. You may have a different way. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the indicators. And I have simply taken the guidance from the PARDEV information brochures on indicator development, and I took the excellent PARDEV information guide on mainstreaming gender into projects, and here it is. There's two rows you'll see. The top row is called immediate objectives or the project outcomes, okay? And then the bottom row is called outputs. Let's start with the outputs first, because remember, these are much more important for the project manager. These are really to help the project manager know if you're, delivering the products and the services on time, and if you're meeting the targets. And if you go to the across then to the next pink part of this row, I've given you an example of a gender absent indicator. It says, and we see this all the time in the Decent Work Country programs, percentage of labor inspectors who participate in and complete training. All right, and then in the next row, I've given you, I've just changed around, and you'll see that I think I used the same amount or even less words to get gender in there for the first part. This is a quantitative indicator. So percentage of women and men, labor inspectors completing training. So I want to know what percentage of women labor inspectors completed the training? What percentage of men labor inspectors completed the training? Why? Because if I see that, well, 99% of men labor inspectors completed the training, oops, gosh, were there even women in that training? And I'll just throw out the question, is there a reason why we might want more women labor inspectors in the training? Some of you will know the answer to that. I'm going to throw that question out and see if somebody can answer it. And then I've added a qualitative indicator to this because, yes, good to, know how many, how many completed this ILO training, but I need to also add a qualitative indicator. So here's my qualitative indicator. Percentage of trained women and men demonstrating increased knowledge of ILO inspection principles and methods. So it's good to know how many completed the training, but how many actually learned something in the training? There it is. And I'm also tracking the percentage of women and the percentage of men. If I find out, well, gosh, 85% of the men did not demonstrate an increase. I'm generalizing here. I'm stereotyping. I admit it. 85% of the men did not show an increased knowledge of ILO inspection principles and methods concerning sexual harassment, for example. Well, that's going to give me some good information, won't it? All right, let's hop back. Let's go back up now to the first row, which is on immediate objectives or project outcomes. And I insist on this one. This one is very important because PARTA tells us in its information brochures that these indicators are very important. Why? Because they measure changes directly resulting from the project. And these changes may be vis-a-vis the target group. The changes may be vis-a-vis the institutional capacity, or they may be vis-a-vis the policy and the regulatory environment. And of course, these also help us to see if the project's on target, and they're very important because this is going to help us communicate our results and successes, including to donors. Donors are very interested in indicators. It's all about the indicators, and they're very interested to know, well, prove it. And this is where they're going to look, is the indicators for including vis-a-vis gender. And of course, these can help inspire others to build on and copy or adapt. So other projects can use your project as a good practice. Okay, so let's go to that pink part, it's red, to say no, 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 no. And here's an example for a gender absent indicator. The first is, by the way, I've taken these from real, I see these all the time. Rate of decrease in accidents in the workplace. Rate of decrease in accidents in the workplace. Well, that actually is a really interesting indicator. That's a pretty smart indicator, but it does, well, I don't know. Is it, what percentage of women and what percentage of men in this workplace? So I have revised that, and you'll notice I didn't add any extra words. So decrease in women and in men workers' accidents. If my project, if I see that, oops, I've decreased by 85% the percentage of women workers' accidents in my area or sector or workplace, but I only decreased by 5% or 15%, you do the math, of men workers' accidents, something's wrong. I'm not addressing the way that men are vulnerable in that workplace. I need to go back and look and see what's happening. Now, PARTA tells us here, I took this from one of it says, combine the quantitative and qualitative indicators. Have both quantitative and qualitative indicators to provide better understanding of the change dynamics and ensure measurements serve both learning and accountability purposes. Decent work is a very abstract term. It's very difficult to quantify. So this is why PARTA is telling us to do this. So I've now gone back after reading the PARTA guidance, and I've now seen, oops, this project has a second very naughty indicator. It is constituents establish a tripartite steering group. Okay, see it all the time. Nice indicator. If I put those together, okay, maybe this is an attempt to combine the quantitative and the qualitative to, capture this change dynamic. But it's gender absent. So I've attempted over here in the green part, I've given a quantitative and a qualitative combined indicator. Women's representation in the tripartite steering group plus percentage of gender-inclusive agenda items. Now, I chose that last percentage of gender-inclusive agenda items just to give an example. It's got to be something easy to count. If not, you'll spend all your days and nights counting things. So it would be very easy to go back and take the 6 agendas of the working group, because it meant 6 times, the tripartite steering group worked 6 times over the year. And I just go back and I just look to see, well, what percentage of the agenda items were gender inclusive? And I have a simple way to define that. I'm just giving you an example. Okay. You've been very quiet, and I'm going to finish here. This is my last slide. Good practices and tips. I took these from the Part-Ev the Part-Ev brochures. Leverage local gender experts and advocates. We don't know. We don't speak the local language. I don't know what the dynamics are vis-a-vis the culture and the religion and the last 20 years of political and economic development. But there are local gender experts, and these are often also incredibly well versed in the other factors that affect gender. And those are the people who you want to bring on to your, and you want to budget for that early on. So and they are just dying to help you, because this is, they care. So you've got to budget for this expertise, have the expertise come in at critical moments in the project, or group together several projects so you can afford to have this expertise. Academics, NGOs. There's no country in the world today where there's not a very rich, experienced group of gender experts there waiting to help. Many of them are men. I've worked with some amazing male gender experts. Second, develop indicators inclusively and democratically. So if we can, together with women and men in that community, sometimes you have to meet separately at first. It's not always easy. And we have some Arab states, we have some difficult, some of you are from countries where it's a challenge. But forge together a shared understanding and a consensus of what the problems are in our situation analysis that we're addressing, both women and men from a gender perspective, what our aims are, what our strategies are going to be, and what success is going to look like. We'll be much stronger, won't we, if everybody agrees together. And this sensitizes everybody to the fact that, okay, we're going to be having some men and masculinities workshops so that we can sensitize men about the costs of gender inequality to their health, the cost of gender inequality to men not having a family life, because it's just a life of work in the paid labor market. We're going to sensitize men to some of the benefits of gender equality for them, for their sisters, mothers, daughters. Okay, I can go on and on. Ensure women's views and genuine participation in all steps, especially design. We just said that. And use parity in decision-making projects. If there's bodies, if there's one thing you can do to kickstart this whole thing, is make sure you got at least 30% women on the decision-making, governing, whatever it is, task force that's making the decisions about this project or this initiative. 30% critical mass, because 30% critical mass, studies show that's where you get the change in the substance of the conversations, what the problems are, and the solutions. 30% critical mass, but where the aim is parity, 45% to 55% of women in my decision-making body. Now, I've listed some amazing tools. That first one there, you can just Google that after this. You will see our Director General has gone public. He's on a website, and you'll see his picture with his goals and commitments for the year 2017 as a gender equality champion. Please look at that. And I've also been listed some more tools. We've got JED, ILO age tools. We've got PARDIV tools, employment tools, UN Women tools. Many donors have tools such as CEDA. You can Google all of these. We have an excellent development cooperation manual and a how-to guide on gender equality in direct and development cooperation projects. And I warmly thank PARDIV, especially Anika Moftis, for sharing those with us. So I'm done. There's some pictures of some of the tools there. That little one at the very end, it says guidance note. That's from eval, because if you don't do this, just a little tip, you're gonna get bitten from behind on the evaluation. So do it up front, and then it's going to be a little bit nicer. Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you so much, Adrienne. Thank you so much. I think we can move on to the Q&A session. I have three main questions, but basically long questions, so I'm going to share it with everyone so everyone can also read them with us. They're on the chat right now, if you can see them. You can see them, Adrienne?
No, but let me open up the chat. Let's see if I can open that. Clicked it. Okay. Go ahead and start reading. I'll try to find it.
All right, yeah. So first question is, labor inspectors on labor law compliance in Ukraine remain female-dominated, 70% women and 30% men. While preparing the conference for 100 labor inspectors, shall I do my best to have 70 women and 30 men as participants, or make sure I have 50 men and 50 women as participants? I believe the option one is better to ensure proportional representation of men and women. Yeah, that's
okay. Could I answer that really quickly? Thank you. That's a very interesting. That's very interesting. We don't see that often. In some of the in some of the Eastern Europe countries, we do see that women. We do see a legacy where women are very present. I think you should go with your intuition. I think that your solution actually is a good one. That's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so second question is, we know the UNSNA doesn't account for unpaid reproductive work towards the GDP. So
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. The question, the statement is, we know the UNSNA doesn't account for unpaid reproductive work towards the GDP. So the data we use in our reports usually doesn't neither, since this is derived from national surveys which use UNSNA definitions. What's the best way to address this in our work?
Okay, I don't know what the UNSNA stands for.
Yes, okay, let me clarify this. Is a question from Saloni. Saloni, maybe you can please tell us more about your question. The floor is yours. Hello? Hello?
Okay, let's go to the third question.
All right.
And we'll come back and we'll let her, maybe we can...
Oh, yeah, okay, so I have it. So it's United Nations National System of Accounts.
Okay, just a question though. I'm just asking because I know that our international labor statisticians events actually have addressed the quantification. First of all, conceptualizing and then quantifying and including unpaid reproductive work. So I'm a bit surprised. Have you not heard about that? Because I'm happy to share that with you. And then let me just, the questions, that's one thing. We know that it doesn't account for work towards the GDP. So does the data we use in our reports usually doesn't either, since this is derived from national surveys, which you use. Yes. What's the best way to address? Well, obviously, I would bring to attention of the national authorities. I will send this will be part of my little packet of information that I'll share. So that's the statisticians report on unpaid work. So let me unpaid work. So that'll be part of the what I'll share. So obviously, if I strategically myself, but others might want to also suggest, I would focus on getting that into the labor, into that national survey. So that's, working with constituents to, that's an opportunity right there. So that's how I would go about that. But then you ask a very interesting thing at the end. You say, what's the best way to address this in our work? Is that also part? Is there a clear correlation between increase in gender response? Is that part of your question? I'm not sure. Are you going on?
No, sorry. That's
another question?
Third question,
okay.
Yes.
So then let's go to the third question. Go ahead and tell us, Stephanie.
Okay, so is there a clear correlation between the increase in gender-responsive development cooperation project and gender-responsive decent work country programs? And then the continuity of this is also, can we equate the increase in gender-responsive development cooperation projects with an increase of specific budget allocation in decent work country programs for gender analysis for decent programs from RB sources?
Oh, no. Okay. For some reason, is there a way, Fatima, to kill my screen? I don't want to see myself because I cannot read these questions. Is there a way that I can take my I don't know. I can't read the question, but these are, I just want to, I can see myself, but what I want to do is actually read these questions because one of them is really needs to be unpacked.
Yeah, they are in the chat. I shared them.
I see, but my chat is blocked with my picture. Don't worry. I can read it sentence by sentence. So for that question on, is there a clear correlation between the increase in gender-responsive DC projects and gender-responsive DWCPs? Well, I would put that back to you. Let me put it this way. If there's two ways to answer that. There's many ways to answer that. I earlier told you that what the governing body has told us to focus on and get right are the indicators, the extent to which the indicators are reflecting data segregated information and dismantling discriminatory policies, legislation, whatever, or building up capacity, building up good practices in promoting gender equality. So that's how we're doing it now. To me, because what gets measured gets done, I am seeing myself, and I read all this stuff, I am seeing now myself more evaluations which are mainstreaming gender and therefore calling out projects that were gender absent and that need to get it in order, get their house in order before they finish up. So I would put it back to you, the people in the field. Do you see a change? Do you see is there more discussion going on? Is there more? Are there expectations? Are the fact that you're working our national level constituents, the governments, must show how they're going to and meet the SDG goals. So I'm going to put that back to you. But I do believe in my heart, or I wouldn't be here, that gender responsive decent work country programs do make a difference. I will say, and I said it earlier, we do know there is a correlation. We have 30 years of research showing that gender absent initiatives, gender absent technical development cooperation at national level merely reinforces unequal relations between women and men, and even often exacerbates women's status. I do know that. Okay. Also, can we equate the...
We have Margaret, who is raising her hand, so maybe we can have an explanation of that question. That question was for her, actually. Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, Margaret.
I'm sorry. I was referring more specifically to the scams. You know, you mentioned and you were giving us the statistics.
Yes.
To say that over the course of time, the DC projects have shown an increase in gender responsive indicators in that. And then you went on to talk about, you know, the increase in the DWCPs, you know, the gender responsiveness of DWCPs that eventually came to 50%.
Yes.
And I was just wondering whether there was a correlation between the two and whether you had seen, for example, an increase in the budget of the DWCPs having an impact on the gender analysis of DC projects. Because you know how oftentimes you will have a group of people that are formulating a DC proposal. And then you come along, you say, well, hang on, we need to do the gender analysis. Yeah, but we have no money, you know? And I was wondering whether we are seeing any good practices of allocating budgets to the DWCPs from RB or RBTC funding, you know, flowing through to DC proposals that are more gender responsive.
Thank you. I cannot answer that question because I'm not on the funding side. I can tell you that we are attempting to measure the money vis-a-vis gender. So, and there is and I know the DG himself at the senior management team made this point and insisted on a new indicator in our action plan, which is attempting to track money, the funding question vis-a-vis what's happening on the ground. But that's I'm not going to get into that here. If you want information about that, I suggest you and I Skype separately. It's an incredibly complicated. The short answer will be we're not there yet at measuring that. That's my short answer. But it's in the action plan, and we got to tell the GB we must show progress towards that. Now you also talked about. You said, oh, you know, we see proposals, they're gender absent, and then how do we get gender into those? Well, that's the whole point of this webinar. That's the whole point of part of sharing proposals with us to say, we're not going to clean up messes here. I don't clean up messes, but if your proposal comes through the PARDEV and it's gender absent, then we're going to say, hey, PARDEV, something's wrong. And we need to find out what the person needs, and you know, most of the time they just haven't gone back and they haven't taken a webinar. You all have taken the webinar now. You all know that you have the basics. This is not rocket science. So you've got the basics here. You've got the further checklists to look at. You have a face with a name, Adrian. So
that's great news. Thank you. That's excellent news. Again, I'll talk to you on the side about that in more detail.
Okay, and you, Margaret, have a focal point here. That's Raphael Crow, who is your entry point for all of this. But I want to say, if there's one thing I really want to highlight, if you get to the step of having a proposal and it's gender absent, oops, no, we go back before we draft the proposal. The proposal situation analysis, you know, that little, it's not a full blown, but that's where we do it. That's where we do it. So please don't think, let me do it, and then I'll get no, and we're not going to help clean up those things either. There are enough tools. There are all the webinars. We've got focal points for all the regions. I am the focal point for Africa, by the way. So yeah, I'm sorry, I went on too long. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Margaret. Margaret, I want to, while we're in front of our peers, I want to do a shout out for Margaret and say thank you very much for systematically sharing the draft Decent Work Country programs, and you just did for Laos, I see for Laos, and I think it was Vietnam. So thank you very much. And thank you also, and I know you have done this when I was the focal point for Asia, and thank you for putting your foot down when some of those come back from us, because we also review those through the quality assurance mechanism of the Decent Work Country programs. Thank you for putting your foot down and taking a stance and walking the talk. I want to say that in front of our peers while I have you online. Is there the next question? Is there, and I mean it, is there a clear correlation between the increase in gender responsive? Okay, we just said that. Next question from Bangkok. Apart from statistical information, there are also administrative records, in quotes, that sometimes provide information on the other areas of work. I guess that was a contribution. Okay, Fatma, did I miss a question, or is someone else wanted to?
No, I believe you didn't miss any, and I believe we're out of time actually, so that's perfect timing. I don't know if anyone else wants to contribute or ask more questions. Otherwise, you of course have Adrienne's contact, and you can write her anytime. But if we don't have any more questions, we are good to close today's webinar. So thank you so much, Adrienne. Thank you so much for great information. Thanks everyone for attending and for your active participations in today's webinar. You'll receive a follow-up from us this week with a link to view the recording of today's webinar. And of course, Adrienne will share all related documentation, and it will be also available on the platform. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Adrienne. On behalf of Bardev and our expert, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Adrienne. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.